WSFA is deeply disappointed that WCOV-TV Channel 20 has petitioned the Federal Communications Commission to take Channel 12 away from Montgomery and leave the area without wide-area VHF coverage. WSFA-TV feels that their proposal ignores many important facts and result in a significant disservice to the people of Central Alabama. This proposal would deprive the state of VHF service from its capital city. We believe it is important for Alabama to have a wide coverage television facility in the capital city that can provide news, weather information, public affairs, and other programming services to outlying parts of the state. Many of our neighbors in communities like Auburn, Opelika, Andalusia, Alex City, Camden, Tuskegee, Marion, Union Springs, and Evergreen would have to get much of their news from stations outside the capital or even from outside the state. Moving Channel 12 would downgrade Alabama and Montgomery and could do serious economic injury to Montgomery. The idea of moving Channel 12 has been considered previously by the FCC and by Congress. Following lengthy study, a decision was reached in 1962 that UHF and VHF could and should live side by side. Soon thereafter, WSFA-TV applied for permission to construct a tall tower to maximize our service. After 12 years of deliberation and litigation, the FCC granted WSFA-TV permission to construct a 2,000-foot tower. This permission was granted without opposition from any other Montgomery television station. Consequently, WSFA-TV has recently completed a multi-million-dollar investment in this tower and the related transmitting equipment. WSFA-TV continues to be committed to providing Montgomery and Central Alabama with a maximum service television station. It has been the only area station to meet the challenge of building the maximum technical facility permitted. WSFA-TV believes the original decision made by the FCC and Congress was and is valid. This arrangement has worked well in communities all over the country. Discontinuing VHF television service from Montgomery would disrupt viewing habits in homes in almost half of Alabama. It would also deprive many people of news service from our capital. WSFA-TV feels confident that the Federal Communications Commission will support this service and will allow it to continue by reaffirming its current policy and dismissing this petition.
It was just during the night.
It's going to be an accident to the best of our knowledge at this time. We'll investigate it a little farther, but all indications is it's just one of those terrible things that's happened.
When was it, how was it, and when was it discovered?
Mr. Betts, who owns the property here, discovered it about 7:30, quarter late this morning, that the house had burned and called us. We came on down. We got here approximately quarter after 8, 8:30.
Do you have any indication yet what might have caused it?
Yes, we think the fire started from that old fireplace in there. It looks like she built a great big fire and then went to bed, and it probably just started from that.
We felt like Henry made a good presentation as to why we decided to councilman, the mayor, every city councilman of Union Springs. I don't think we're asking too much and asking for a chance to vote on this issue. We should have had a chance to vote on the sales tax, but we didn't. We went on and went along with it without much complaints and opposition. We needed the sales tax. The people went on. But then, I guess with that, maybe that's one reason that they, I don't know whether that's the reason they don't want to give us a chance to vote on this or not. Maybe I just don't know. But to go forth with this immediately and
Of assistant secretaries be filled at a later date. Make the motion that the commissioners, probate judge.
I will introduce in the Alabama legislature a local bill which simply says that the people of Bullock County should have a right to vote yes or no as to whether or not they want a prison system in Bullock County. If, when you decide that you want it here, I am to work hard and long to get it here. If you decide that you do not want it here, it's my duty to help keep it out.
Probate judge and city council, as well as representatives.
did everyone hear and does anyone have any questions?
Will be completed the last of the third week in December or the first of the last.
Every time a joker runs from that penitentiary out there, if it's put out there, then it's going to be our duty, the Highway Patrol, sheriff, city police, game warden, and whatnot, to catch that joker and bring him here, and we want to hold him until the next court day. They don't take him back, and they don't go out and look for nobody.
After 2 years and scores of meetings, the Montgomery City County Consolidation Study Committee is preparing to report its results. A paper is being prepared by pro-consolidation committee members, the majority report, and one by the anti-consolidation members, the minority report. But neither paper will answer the two biggest questions that plague consolidation considerations: how to vote in referendum for or against the idea, and how to tax residents if consolidation is approved. On the voting question, it used to be that when an area voted on consolidation, 2 referenda were held. One vote inside the large municipality involved, and another vote on those residents outside the municipality but living within the county in question. But a court test in the Northeast on 2 such votes, based on the one man, one vote rule, has changed that thinking. Because the vast majority of the voters would be within the central urban core of the large municipality involved, but because the entire vote of the municipality wouldn't count any more than the vote in the rural areas with a smaller population, the votes inside the city wouldn't count as much as votes outside the city. So now when consolidation is considered in most areas, the one man, one vote matter is strongly considered. And on taxes, experience of those who have gone through government mergers before indicates setting up 3 taxing districts for city services, suburban services, and rural services pleases those favoring each service load and tax load. Montgomery Consolidation Study Committee Chairman Richard Arrington says the experiences of both cases will be outlined in the majority and minority reports.
Well, of course, the one man, one vote rule has brought about changes in all of our voting practices, and I am not too familiar with the case you referred to, but I believe that in one area where they were just having rural people vote as to their feelings and urban people vote as to their feelings, someone challenged the fact that challenged the vote on the fact that all the urban people were also citizens of the county, whereas citizens of the county were not citizens of the city. And so they had 2 separate elections, one for only city people and then the second for everybody in the county.
It has to pass both to pass.
In this instance. How it would work in Alabama, I don't know. That would be established in the legislative act that calls for the election.
So your committee really has no recommendation on how that would be handled?
No. I hope the reports that will be written by the subcommittees will contain a complete outline of how this has been handled in other areas.
What about taxing for urban, suburban, and rural areas? Is there any recommendation in the report for that?
No, there will be no recommendation as to that. There again, the reports will merely outline what has been done in other areas that have consolidated.
Basically, what was the concern about taxing in this committee?
Well, the basic concern in consolidation, not only with this committee, but everywhere consolidation has been tried, has been the fact that services must necessarily differ, the degree of service. There's no way in the world that we could have fire protection that would give rural citizens the same fire insurance rate as the people in Montgomery enjoy. Same thing for sewerage. You couldn't run sewer lines all over the county. So they have zones of service, and the taxes charged in those zones of service reflect the degree of service that those zones get.
This really can make it more palatable for those in a rural area that might otherwise be against
Oh,
consolidation.
yes, it would be the only equitable way of handling it.
But the study committee is not recommending exact manners of voting or taxing. The long process of hammering out legislation must be followed before those watching the consolidation possibilities, pro and con, will know how Montgomery's chances on voting and taxing stand. This is Dick Bird reporting for Composite.
I think,
Is it communication? You can't talk with
well,
the same terms?
obviously communication comes into this as well, purely just, on an elementary basis, language, you see, because there are language problems even amongst the blacks in South Africa. You have 8 different black nations, Zulus, Xhosas, Tswanas, Vendas, and so on, who speak different languages. Aside from that, within the African context, Western civilization, which was brought in by the colonial powers, was the dominant one, by virtue of the free enterprise system and capitalism and so on, which is alien to black civilization. And by bringing in this more powerful civilization, this came in conflict with the African civilization, which had to succumb to the more powerful one, you see. So that, and this is what we are trying to reverse in South Africa, to do away with dominance, with white dominance over the various black nations and over black culture in South Africa, you see. So I would say that the conflict between Western civilization and African civilization, that that is one of the problems, probably one of the main problems that we have to cope with.
What would happen if American industries, business, banks, development companies, and so forth took capital out of South Africa?
I think you would have not development in South Africa, not development for all the people, specifically the blacks. You will have the blacks in South Africa revert to a much worse position, and because it is true that not only American but Western investment in South Africa has created thousands and thousands of jobs for blacks. The government in South Africa has embarked, especially as far as black education is concerned, on probably one of the biggest projects of its kind in the world. Black schools are being built at the rate of 4 a day, and high school enrollment, say between 1974 and 76, for black students doubled. So you have a snowball effect.
You said you just returned from South Africa and you'd noticed a basic change in South Africans' attitude towards Americans. What was it?
I think South Africans, the average man on the street, has been subjected to a lot of negative publicity as far as the United States is concerned. Newspapers, I think, have given prominence to statements by prominent Americans about majority rule in South Africa, that South Africa should immediately turn over government to the blacks. And obviously this has caused a great deal of negative feeling amongst South Africans.
Is it going to have an effect on the use of military facilities in South Africa? The United States does use, as does the Western world.
Yeah, I don't think it will go that far, We are a Western ally. We're not a Western country. We are an African country. But we are one of the few African countries and maybe the only one that the West and the United States can depend on 100%.
You made the remark that you're not prepared to give lives for something that will exterminate the last vestiges of freedom in Africa. What did you mean by that?
If we have to give in to pressures from outside South Africa, which are brought to bear on South Africa and on the South African government, pressures which try to bring in a system of government which are totally alien, not only to white South Africans, but to the Zulus, to the Xhosas, to the Indians, and to the Coloreds. A system which cannot work and which will result in civil war within that country. I'm prepared to lay down my life for freedom.
Get your ladder back up there now. Get that ladder back up there. Get up on that wall. Let's go.
Absolutely none. The legislators who came were very positive in their comments about the value of this kind of interchange. We had over 50 legislators present. I've written several personal letters to every legislator. I visited about 1/3 of the entire legislature in their home offices and home districts during the past few months. And everywhere we've gone, I've been told that this is what we need to do, that they appreciated our taking the time to come to their offices, and that that's the way it has to be done in Alabama, that people haven't heard from you, don't know about your problems, they tend to neglect you, and in recent years that's exactly what's happened at Montevallo.
This is one of the things that I would really fault this administration for. The president has made many statements on human rights and the concern of this administration for human rights. But when you examine it, you see that we are applying our concern selectively. We are saying we're very concerned about the human rights of Steve Biko and the blacks in South Africa. We don't say how concerned we are over the hundreds of thousands that have been killed in Uganda, for instance. We don't say how concerned we are over the human rights of those who are denied the basic rights in Red China or in Russia. We are warming our relations with Cuba, and there are some 30-odd thousand people, political prisoners there, according to the accounts I read. So, yes, we should be concerned with human rights, but we should be concerned with everybody's rights and not just do it selectively where it's politically expedient.
I can quote our foreign minister on this. He said that he's not prepared to lay down his life for a South Africa in which things like, he's not prepared to lay down his life. You know, these were his words. I'm not prepared to lay down my life for a bench in a Johannesburg park which says whites only or blacks only, you see. But we are working towards more freedom in South Africa. We will try to do so regardless of outside pressures, because we live inside the country. We have to live with each other. We know how to change and we change according to the needs of our society. I don't think that people outside South Africa realize the needs of the peoples inside South Africa, black, white, Indian, and colored.
The Alabama Christian Eagles are well balanced this season with 4 players scoring in double figures. David Thompson leads that group. Thompson has a 22-point average through 16 games, hitting nearly 56% of his field goals. Thompson also leads the club in rebounds with 11 per game. Ronald Fantroy and Michael Riles are next on both the scoring and rebounding list. Fantroy has been especially tough in clutch situations. This steal and basket gave Alabama Christian a comeback victory over Lawson State earlier this season. Like Thompson, Fantroy and Riles have hit more than half of their field goal attempts this season. In fact, the Eagles are shooting 50% as a team, so shooting hasn't been much of a problem. But road games have been a problem for Alabama Christian. All 4 losses, including 2 in conference play, have been on the road. The Eagles are in second place in the Central Division of the Alabama Junior College Conference, 2 games behind Southern Union. So the Eagles will have to improve their road record if they hope to have a shot at the division title. The Eagles meet first place Southern Union at home February 6, but 3 of their remaining 7 conference games are on the road. Dan O'Brien, WSFA TV Sports. Girls high school basketball is not exactly a major spectator sport yet in Montgomery, and that's too bad because one of the top prospects in the South plays at Jeff Davis this year. 6-foot senior center Gene Rourke has averaged more than 34 points per game this season. With Rourke in the lineup, Jeff Davis has a record of 8-0. Without her, the Vols are 0-2. Rourke sat out those 2 games with an ankle injury. As a sophomore and a junior, Gene led her high school team in Virginia to the state basketball championships there. Now she hopes to do the same for Jeff Davis in Alabama. After that, Gene says she's looking ahead to college basketball and maybe a step further.
Well, my ultimate goal is the 1980 Olympics. That's ultimate, but yeah, I'd like to play in college and do really well, and maybe some international competition if I get a chance to try out for anything.
Any place in particular you're leaning to right now?
Yes, I pretty well narrowed down to Stanford University in California because it's strong both academically and athletically.
Nobody's been able to contain Rourke in high school this season. Her lowest scoring effort is 26 points. Still, Jeff Davis coach Luann Nick says Jean does more than score a lot of points.
Her passing is just one of the main parts of our game, really, because she's so unselfish, and if people double team her, then she's so willing to pass off anyway. A lot of times we have to tell her to take her shot.
Jean Rourke still scores a lot of points, though. No one can argue with that. In this game against Lanier, she dumped in 43, leading the Vols to a 91-48 victory. But even that was not her top game. Jean scored 50 against Raymer earlier this season. Those statistics are impressive, but Jean knows she still has some things to work on.
My rebounds, my dad doesn't think I get up high enough for my rebounds. And also like faking and driving and just having a court sense of where everybody is and knowing what to do at the right time. And anticipation, I need to increase that. Anticipation where the ball's going to go.
Jean Rourke's opponents have found out quickly where the ball's going to go. When Jean's on the court, sooner or later, it'll end up in the basket. Dan O'Brien, WSFA TV Sports.
At one time, those who were out of work could only take their problem to the State Employment Service. And if they weren't qualified for the available jobs, it was back to the unemployment line. Today, there's one alternative, a skill center. This one in Montgomery provides counseling for those who attend, a nursery which costs the state considerably less than other child care programs, and a number of classes that train applicants in a skill and have many of them ready for employment in a short length of time.
We deal, I would say, mostly with people who are 65% disadvantaged and 35% non-disadvantaged people. We consider those who are referred to us from the employment service as the Alabama State Employment Service, and they refer them on that basis, 65% disadvantaged, 35% non-disadvantaged. Once they are referred here, Bill, we have to take them, and we train them in a skill in a given period of time. After that, we continue to work with the employment service and that notifying them that the person is now ready, they find jobs for them. The person then is employed or not employed, but mostly employed.
What kind of skills do you teach here?
Presently, we are teaching mostly clerical skills. We have 5 classes of clerical skills, and that includes bookkeeping, stenography, clerk general, and clerk typist. In those 5 classes, we train, I would say, approximately something like 300 pupils, but we are only given 90 slots for it. And how we can squeeze in so many people in 90 slots in that we have a given time for a person to come in for his training. Once he's job ready, he's referred to the employment service and he's replaced with another referral.
So if you can get somebody in here and then out on the streets and ready for a job in a shorter amount of time than is allotted, then you can bring someone else in here and use up that time in that slot?
That's right. And that is made possible by the close relationship that has been established between Manpower and Alabama State Employment Service.
One of the problems that we have is not everybody can go to college, not everybody can be a physician. So what we try to do is we try to set up courses to gain skills for those people that are not able to go into the higher professional skills. This provides these people an entry into the job market with skills that they can go into the job market and make a living in the overall area. People are not going to hire people that don't have the skills. This gives them the skills here, and we can then hope that they can be long-term in the job market.
What kind of return is the taxpayer getting on his dollar?
Well, theoretically, these people, when they get jobs and are placed, and we have a 75% placement record, and we have this by contract with the Alabama State Employment Service. We have a 90% utilization rate. That means we have to keep it 90% filled. When these people go out and get jobs, they now are paying taxes.
We have programs comparable to this in all of the large cities, in most of the smaller cities in the state. We are providing skill training in probably 35 or 40 different occupational areas in the state. We have basically 2 formats that we use for manpower training in the state, and that is we will have a facility like this one where we have classes set up to address primarily the needs of the manpower client. However, in all of the, I think that in all of the technical schools in the state, we have an individual referral program in which a manpower client or a CETA participant, as we would call them, would go into a regular ongoing program in a technical school and a junior college. We're providing training for in occupations such as LPN, licensed practical nurses. We're training automobile mechanics, welders, in addition to the kind of training that is going on here.
Well, what do you see in the future for the Skills Center? Do you see it adding on some new slots?
I can tell from the few years that I have been here, we have moved since my time, and that has only been 2 years, from maybe 3 classes of clerical training to now 5 in 2 years. I can tell from what we propose in the future and what our prime sponsor is in line with the thinking is that we are going to train more because there's a greater demand out in that employment world. Classes are going to expand because different types of jobs are now in demand. So I see a bigger and better skill center.
I do know that in many programs, in many federal programs, that dollars are put into activities that are of short-range benefit. Many times jobs are created where people can get into a job without any training, a subsidized job that lasts 6 months or a year or something, and then all of a sudden they find themselves back out on the street again because they don't have a skill. The impact of this program is that we have between 3,500 and 4,000 people going through the manpower program in the state of Alabama every year, and those people are being offered quality skill training. And when you think in terms of the welfare payments not being made, unemployment compensation benefits that are not being paid, when you think about the income taxes that people are going to pay, and then there's a rather intangible thing that comes out of this in terms of people, what it does to a person to know that they are making a valid contribution to the economy, to the society in which we live, to their families.
Well, I guess I would define it, Clark, in terms of some of the things that we've been trying to do and why we're doing them. One of the things that I first discovered after going to Montevallo and returning home to Alabama is that the University of Montevallo has an identity problem in the state. There are people who remember and even know now Alabama College, as we once were called, but who don't make the connection between Alabama College, the old girls' school, and the University of Montevallo. That's affected our legislative appropriations. It's affected other aspects of the university's existence in the state. And for that reason, very early on, I determined that I was going to have to get out around the state, meeting personally with legislators, doing interviews like this one, meeting with alumni and alumni, trying to remind people that we're still in business, that we need public support, that we need public understanding, and of course, ultimately have to have legislative support in the form of adequate funding.
Have you got any flack from the receptions you held with the legislature itself?
No, absolutely none. The legislators who came were very positive in their comments about the value of this kind of interchange. We had over 50 legislators present. I've written several personal letters to every legislator. I visited about 1/3 of the entire legislature in their home offices and home districts during the past few months. And everywhere we've gone, I've been told that this is what we need to do, that they appreciated our taking the time to come to their offices, and that that's the way it has to be done in Alabama, that people haven't heard from you, don't know about your problems, they tend to neglect you, and in recent years that's exactly what's happened at Montevallo.
What about funding? Now you say there is a problem in funding higher education. How is it affecting Montevallo?
Well, our problem is not unrelated to the public relations problem. Since we've kind of been out of sight, out of mind, so to speak, we haven't been a factor to be reckoned with in the funding process in Alabama, and we've kind of taken it in a good natured fashion and haven't really complained particularly, and I've tried to change that by being the squeaky wheel a little bit. But ultimately, my concern with funding in Alabama concerns the process rather than just the product. If the process were adequate and we had the opportunity to make our case in the right forums and we lost, then I would be satisfied that we at least made the case and the representatives of the people of the state made the determination, and so be it. But in Alabama today, not only is there not an adequate process for making your case, that is, at no point yet have I had the opportunity to appear in a public forum and make a budget case on the basis of policy and programmatic concerns. The closest thing that we had to that was a meeting of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education here in Montgomery on the 2nd, wherein they gave every president the opportunity to take issue with the staff recommendations, but essentially that was not a public forum where you first discussed policy and program matters. Pretty much the decisions had been made. Certainly the mathematics of the situation was such that not much of an adjustment could be made. We've yet to have the kind of opportunity for a public discussion of our budget problems that I think any state should provide to its institutions. That's one problem. But in Alabama, to compound it for a small university, the budget recommendations are primarily based on math. They're based on the inexorable and what I've called the mindless math of formulas used to determine funding recommendations, and those are all related to enrollment. That is, the only way that you can get significant increases of new dollars for any purpose in Alabama today is to have a significant enrollment increase from one year to the next. And of course all that does is encourage growth, a growth that many times may not be appropriate, it may not be consistent with sound public policy. And the second decision I made, therefore, at Montevallo when I went there was that we needed to re-examine our mission and goals, and we have a formal study underway doing that to decide whether we ought to grow or to remain small, and whether we in fact could make that decision if the only way we could get new money was through formula-funded, enrollment-based recommendations. And that, I suppose, is my main concern today.
How do you argue program, academic program, with legislators who deal with bottom line? How do you do that? How do you communicate that?
Well, the irony is that that is ultimately the only way that you effectively justify your budget increases. No legislator that I know of understands and appreciates what an FTE is, and when you're talking about thousands of credit hours, that really is meaningless. You talk about programs. For example, at Montevallo we have the Alabama Traffic Safety Center, which teaches the teachers who teach students traffic education, and who teach policemen how to undertake high-performance driving, and they teach motorcycle patrolmen how to take a spill on a Harley-Davidson. Legislators understand that program. It's easy to sell it. It has a benefit to society that's understandable. We never have a problem funding that program. In fact, we are recommended for 100% of our requests for that program and for our other special line item at Montevallo, the Speech and Hearing Clinic, which is unique, has a residential component. It serves students and others in the state with communication disorders. That's real. It's people. There's a payoff. That's programmatic. People understand it. It's only when you get into the so-called operations and maintenance budget, the O&M budget, which is the largest budget entity for all of the universities, which causes you to talk about large aggregate figures and all the rest, that you have a problem communicating that.
Natural gas has a safety factor built in, an odor. But tell that to the people of Auburn, Alabama, who saw and felt a large part of a downtown block blow up recently, probably because of leaking natural gas. Whatever the cause, some type of explosive gas blew up these buildings, as happens approximately once a week somewhere in the United States. To combat such explosions, a gas alarm has now come on the market. The McGraw-Edison Company says it warns of escaping gas before it becomes dangerous.
We feel that even though the consumer may have one or two smoke alarms in his home, if he still has natural gas or propane gas, there is a need for a gas alarm.
Does this work like a smoke alarm does, basically?
Yes, we have set it up where it reaches a certain level of saturation in the home, and then the horn goes off, which is about 85 decibels, that wakes the homeowner.
Battery powered?
No, this one's AC powered.
Is it adjusted so that, say, if a pilot light goes out on the stove, you have a gas stove, it's not going to set it off, is it?
Well, for natural gas, for an explosion, you have to have 6% saturation. If the pilot light saturates the air to 2% level, it will activate it. But I'd say that in most cases it wouldn't activate it if a pilot light went off.
Auburn, Alabama had a natural gas explosion, a pretty bad one here recently. But does that kind of thing really happen very often?
Yes, in our surveys we found out that there is at least one gas explosion every week. In most cases there is generally a fatality or a lot of damage done to the home or business or whatever it may be.
Would this give I suppose, a warning that gas was present? It wouldn't necessarily tell you it was about to be sparked or anything.
That's correct. Like I said, it is activated at a safe level where you could get out, get your family out of the house, possibly have time to turn the gas off and call the fire department before the explosion.
Apparently there is a combination of good money to be made and competition for the future to beat, because the new gas alarm is already hitting the retail market. And retail marketing being what it is these days, hot and heavy, the first area for sales of the new alarm has been Auburn, Alabama, where the thought of a gas explosion is not thought of as something that happens to other people, it happens at home. This is Dick Bird for Composite.
The Choctawhatchee surpasses flood stage at Newton and continues beyond its banks as it flows southward through Dale County toward Florida. The Choctawhatchee, near Newton, is threatening some rural property, and for other rural buildings in low-lying areas, the water is more than a threat. It's roof high, and the river is running very fast as well as wide.
This rose 4/10 of a foot in 1 hour. Approximately 6 families will be moved out at this time. We feel like that if it continues to rise at the rate it is, that we may have to move out as many as 12 or 15 families.
Do you have any idea how long this rise is going to continue yet?
Oh, no, we have heard several different stories, you always can, But I feel like probably it'll crest sometimes about noon tomorrow, in my personal opinion.
Will you ask for help from the National Guard?
I'll ask for help from the National Guard if this river is still rising. It will be more people in danger than we can get out, and we'll have to have some help.
By 2:30, Geneva's Mayor Herring had no more time to think nor to wait. The Pea River was rising faster than 6 inches per hour. He called out the National Guard at 2:45. They are bringing large trucks in to help evacuate families that are now completely cut off by water. The Choctawhatchee is full. The Pea River has no place to empty. This problem is complicated further by a third drainage stream, the Twin Bridges Creek. It is overfull and is spilling its water into the confluence of the two rivers. The Choctawhatchee, Pea, and Twin Bridges Creek are expected to continue rising throughout the night, with a crest of at least 8 to 9 feet over flood stage due by tomorrow. The floodwater rescue efforts are being made miserable by 25-mile-an-hour winds and 32-degree temperatures. The wind chill during the evacuations this afternoon was about 14 degrees, with the temperatures expected in the low 20s tonight. Clark Edwards, WSFA TV News, Geneva, Alabama.